One, two, three. Three count four.
Hello everyone, I am Be Better Gamer. Welcome to Be Better Gamer Wrestling, the channel dedicated to wrestling and video games. It's been a while, hasn't it? What can bring me out of my absence? What could bring me out of my isolation? There can only be one thing. The AEW Games Announcement that was just this past Tuesday, where if you watch this channel or have watched this channel, you know that I am pretty excited about what was discussed. So I want to talk about what was talked about for that AEW Games Announcement. And, I wrote down a few bullet points. I'm not going to get too in-depth, kind of keep it loose, casual, but definitely talk about a lot of the passion that I see for the project and the passion that I share for wanting to play the game. So let's get into it. Obviously, the big takeaway for me, and again, if you know this channel, Virtual Pro Wrestling, all I wanted was for Kenny Omega or someone to mention Virtual Pro Wrestling during the announcement. I even tweeted about it. I said, hey, wouldn't it be great if they mentioned Virtual Wrestling? And then right away, Kenny name dropped not only Virtual Wrestling, but No Mercy. And that's when all the, ideas started floating around in my head. All the possibilities started to this could actually happen. They could actually say they're going to make a wrestling video game like Virtual Pro Wrestling or WWF No Mercy. Now, what does that mean if you are unfamiliar with those games? Well, back in the day, on the N64, there were a series of wrestling games developed by a company called Aki Corporation, and the games were published by THQ. They had developed a couple of wrestling games before that, but really, I like to think this Aki collection, as I call it, started on the N64 with WCW vs. NWO World Tour. Almost simultaneously, there was a Japanese version of that game released called Virtual Pro Wrestling 64. Then later on, we got WCW NWO Revenge. And then THQ, who was publishing the games, they went from having the WCW games license over to the WWF games license. So we got WWF WrestleMania 2000, followed by Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, which was only released in Japan in January of 2000. And then finally, WWF No Mercy. A lot of people, a lot of wrestling game fans hold up No Mercy as one of the greatest wrestling games ever made. And they're not wrong. They just haven't played Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. I'm kidding. I don't want everyone going in the comments saying, oh, No Mercy is better. Revenge is better. Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 is better. They're all great. They're all great games. I love the entire series. It's my favorite series of wrestling games for sure. Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 is my favorite of the series. Is it the best? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. What matters is that it's Kenny Omega's favorite series of wrestling games. And that's something he wanted to drive home during the presentation, that this new AEW game is going to be based on his love of that series of wrestling games. And he specifically name dropped Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 and No Mercy because not only do people, I think, always say those are their favorites, but because those were the last two, right? After that, Aki lost the working relationship with THQ when it came to the WWE games. THQ then went with Yuke's, who we'll get into later, and they started making games on the PlayStation and other systems. Aki would go on to make Def Jam Vendetta and Def Jam Fight for New York, and then also an Ultimate Muscle, I think 1 or 2 Ultimate Muscle games on the GameCube, and then that's it. They were out of the wrestling game business. So it's very telling that you say Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 and No Mercy because that was it. That was the peak. It stopped there, and we didn't get anything else from that company specifically using that engine of wrestling game ever again. And Kenny Omega is putting it out there because he wants to guarantee that this game is going to be reminiscent of that. So much so that at the end of the presentation, and this was a huge shocker for me, he announced that Gaeta-san is going to be working on the project as well. Gaeta-san was the lead director of No Mercy and the other Aki games. So that goes from just saying, oh yeah, I want my game to be kind of like No Mercy, to no, it's going to be a lot like No Mercy. It's going to be great. hopefully, we can only hope it's great. They definitely seem serious about it. They definitely seem serious about this being a passion project, and not only catering to those fans who long for the era of the N64 style wrestling games, but also just catering to the wrestling fans that long for the era of when picking up and playing a wrestling game was not easy. I don't like to say easy, but intuitive, you know? And that's something that I've always held the Aki games in high regard, is that they're very intuitive. If you watch pro wrestling on TV and you pick up an N64 controller, as weird as it is, as weird as it feels to pick up one of these, you're like, what the, how do I use this? Right away, you can start playing those wrestling games and pretty much do whatever it is you want to do from seeing what you watch on TV. I think that's why he also name dropped games like NBA Jam, NFL Blitz, and one of my favorites, Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball, because I think that's something that wrestling games, specifically the WWE games, have gotten away from. They've gotten away from that pick up and play, where you can just, you and your buddies just get into it and right away just spamming stone cold stunners, you know? Or at least you gotta build up to it. You gotta get your special for it. And we all know how the game works. So that's very exciting. And it's not just Omega. It's not just Omega. A lot of wrestlers are fans of these wrestling games. Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles, who even retweeted when I made a call of him in Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. Sami Callihan, Johnny Gargano, Ember Moon. There's a lot of wrestlers who grew up playing these games. There's a lot of wrestling fans who grew up playing these games. And I think that's fantastic and has got me really hyped about the possibilities of this game. Now, we have to meet hype with reality. And the reality is, game development isn't easy. Game development takes a long time. There wasn't much shown of the game besides very early rough footage, and that, for me at least, was expected. I wasn't expect them to have a full-blown match up and running. I mean, AEW as a company is just over a year old, and then in that time they're gonna get a game developer and get a game up and running in like what, 6 to 9 months the most, at the most. I would be surprised if this game really didn't start hitting active development within the past maybe 3 to 5 months, and that's being generous because you got to factor in the pandemic that happened this year as well, because not just a game company like Yuke's and the other game companies that they are working on for their mobile games have been adjusting to that, but the game industry as a whole. I was looking at the footage and I was like, okay, at least they showed an idea, right? An idea of what they kind of want the game to look like and what they want it to feel. But like, it was a teaser of all teaser trailers. This game is not coming out next year. This game, 2022, 2023 even. And I'm not saying that to like be a downer. I'm not saying that to, you know, crush anyone's dreams or hopes. I have probably some of the highest hopes of this game as much as you or anyone else. But let's be realistic here. This is not a game that you can build in a year. They are trying to recreate an engine that has seemingly been lost in time. That's why they probably had to go get Gaeta-san. And they are working with a company who is seasoned, and I'm talking about Yuke's here. You know, they've been making wrestling games for 20 years, but it's a new relationship. And they're not going to just say, hey, let's just do what you were doing with the 2K games or the SmackDown versus Raw games. They might even want to expand upon that engine and create another engine entirely. That's not going to happen in a year. And especially if they are working in, you know, isolation, if they are working remotely as a company to make this game. As much as I'm excited, I'm also realistic, and I am looking forward to the days when we do get more information. But, you know, I saw a lot of people already, you know, crapping on the graphics. Oh, why does Jericho look... It's so alpha, early alpha. You can't take any of that footage for Saw. A lot of that is going to change. A lot of that's going to change. The models are going to change. I'm sure even their vision is going to change. That's the thing too, right? Kenny Omega could come on stage and say, hey, I want to make a game like Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. I want to make a game like No Mercy. But when you really get in there, they're probably going to be like, okay, well, what if we add this? What if we do this? What if we change this? What if we change that? And they're gonna have the bones of what they want to do probably represented at the end of it, but so much is gonna change. And I think we have to be realistic as fans, not just as wrestling fans, but video game fans. I mean, Cyberpunk is still getting delayed as I'm making this video. So, you know, like, games take a very long time. So I'm being positive. 2022, you know, that's when if I'm a betting man, if I'm putting my money in the AEW Casino Royale, whatever that game is gonna be called, if I'm putting my chips down on that, I'm saying 2022. 2023 if it gets delayed and pushed back. But you know what? The more time they have to work on it, the better we will be for it, because it'll be a more polished game. Now, another talking point, Ukes, right? That's the other elephant in the room. There's a lot of elephants in this room. What was great about the presentation was, I think that there was a lot of information they wanted to get out, right? So I love that they were doing the whole Steve Jobs-esque, and like Kenny Omega, then Aubrey, then Cody. You know, that was really funny to see. I really like that. Ukes being announced as the official developer of the main AEW game. I was surprised, but I wasn't. You know, last summer, 2 summers ago, it was announced that Ukes was stepping away from working with 2K on the WWE 2K series, and that was a big deal because Ukes has been working on WWE wrestling games since 2000. Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 and No Mercy came out in the year 2000 on the N64, and THQ, what they wanted not just to capture the success of the N64, but they wanted to do it on other platforms. And Aki, so the story goes, I'm paraphrasing here, but Aki recommended Ukes as a development company because Ukes had already done a couple of wrestling games before on the PlayStation to work with THQ as well. So then that's when Ukes started developing the WWE games on PlayStation, and we got, you know, the first SmackDown game, and then the rest is history. It's interesting that at the twilight of the Aki games on N64, that was the birth and the rise of Ukes as being the primary developer for THQ and the WWE games for over 20 years. And that came to an end recently, and a lot of people thought, oh, they're probably just going to go make the AEW game. And I didn't think it was going to be that simple. I didn't think it was going to be that cut and dry. But hey, what do I know? They're working on the AEW game. What did I think was going to happen? I thought that maybe they were going to work on an original game. You know, like an original wrestling game, which is something I still very much want to see. You know, I miss the days of like the Saturday Night Slam Masters. You know, like just a wrestling game that it's its own thing. It's not based on another property. But them working with AEW, I think, is still a good call because, again, it's not like they're going to take exactly what they were doing with the old WWE games. I really truly believe they're going to try to create something different, something that is fresh, something that feels old but new at the same time, and combining both worlds. If you think about it, combining all the work they did on the SmackDown series of games and the WWE 2K games, along with, you know, working with Gaeta-san and the Aki style all coming together, I think that's going to be a very beautiful relationship. But Ukes is also a veteran development company, 20 years. Again, they want to get this game out eventually, and as much as I just said, it's not coming out in 2021 realistically. I think hitting a 2022 release date is probably more possible with a team like Ukes at the helm. So I'm excited about that. The Aki series of games have always been my favorite. I've never really probably loved any Ukes wrestling game, but I don't think that was ever their fault. I just think I just have, you know, different standards. But hey, everyone's talking about SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. SmackDown, everyone loves SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. That's always like the other side of wrestling game fans' argument of the best wrestling game of all time. And we maybe even see some features returning from a game like that or other Ukes created games, because again, they have that personal investment, and maybe they want to bring some of that stuff back too that was missing from even their games. So again, I think it's all positive. It's all positive stuff to go around. And then the last part of their announcement, or the last couple of parts of their announcement, they're working on mobile games, which was rumored a few months back, and, you know, good for them. I'm not a big mobile gamer. in terms of playing games on my phone or tablet or anything like that. I know there's a lot of WWE style mobile games out there. I think it's smart for them. I made a YouTube channel based on N64 wrestling games from 20 years ago. Do I have like 10 million subscribers? No. Why? Because realistically, it's a niche market, okay? So wrestling games in general, the 2K games do fairly well, but wrestling games in general, I've always said, people who play wrestling games are wrestling fans. You know, like I don't think there's a single person who goes out and buys a WWE game and they don't watch WWE. You know, someone didn't pick up Fire Pro and they've never seen a wrestling match in their life. So wrestling games itself is a niche market. Gaming is a huge market. It's a broad market, and a lot of people who play video games play on mobile. That's just the reality. You know, we can't deny it. As much as we consider ourselves to be just a console gamer or a PC gamer, mobile gaming is huge. It will always be huge, and sometimes it's bigger than console and PC gaming. So, you know, they were like, yeah, we got this console wrestling game, but then we also have this entirely different mobile game. I think what it is pretty exciting is that they're saying the one mobile game is going to be a GM mode game, and they showed a lot more of that than they did of the console AEW game. So that's obviously much further in development. It looks fun. It looks cool. It looks neat. Will I download it and test it out? Yeah, probably. Will I get hooked on it? I mean, if it's like Extreme Warfare Revenge in mobile form, maybe. My issues with GM modes specific to one company is that it's specific to one company. You know what I mean? There's only so many times I can book the Young Bucks against FTR and Penta and Phoenix in a triple threat tornado style match. You know, there's only so many times I can do that. And I'm sure I'll keep getting 5 stars on the game. I like simulation GM management mode games when you can encompass the entire world of pro wrestling. If that's somehow included in the game, if you can create wrestlers and include them into your GM mode, and you're basically creating different organizations like Ring of Honor, WWE, New Japan, you know, even women's wrestling organizations like Stardom, that would be really cool. But again, we don't really know what all that's going to look like. So I think it's really to get to that audience, to get to that mobile audience, to get to a different style of gamer. That is definitely a big part of, you know, tapping into different areas of your audience. Because again, not all wrestling fans just play on consoles. A lot play on PC, a lot play on mobile. So I think it's good. Variety is the spice of life, right? And if you want to be successful, you got to have variety. The second mobile game, I don't know what they're going with that. It's a gambling game? They showed nothing of that. Think about that. That's the game that's supposed to be coming out first. And then they showed this really, you know, again, funny, well done promo of, you know, walking around a casino and everyone's gambling and John Silver's, you know, playing without his shirt on. It was kind of funny, but they showed nothing. They showed nothing. Like, what is this? Is this just like a poker game? Is this a match 3 game? Is this Telltale style poker game? Like, are you going to be sitting with like animated versions of like Kenny Omega and Santana and Ortiz, and you're like, oh, I got a full house, you know? Like, I don't know. I don't play gambling games either, so I don't know about that one. Not gonna play it, but whatever. It's the people are probably gonna play it and download it and love it, and that's great. And again, that's what I liked about this AEW Games announcement, is that it incorporated these 3 very unique, very distinct games that they want to broaden their audience, broaden their horizons, and get into the gaming market. And again, the gaming market is very diverse. So the future, I think, looks bright for AEW in terms of the gaming space. Obviously, very excited about that AEW console game that's going to basically be the rebirth of virtual pro wrestling and No Mercy in the Aki style. And probably have influence from other wrestling games series. Let's be honest. I mean, there's not one perfect wrestling game, and there never will be one perfect wrestling game. That's like saying, you know, there's one perfect video game in general. There's not, you know, and I think that's the beauty of it, right? It was that we're getting something new. We're getting something fresh. We're getting something that's going to challenge the norm. I mean, right now, it's pretty limited in what we have for wrestling games. We have the 2K series, you know, and then we have Fire Pro. which is great. I love Fire Pro. Fire Pro is my second favorite series of wrestling games. There's a lot of stuff being developed though on the indie scene. There's Retrofest. There's this hardcore wrestling game being made by Gakdal. You can follow him on Twitter. There's a bunch of still Aki inspired hacks and ROM hacks and new wrestling games being made, and I see that popping up on my social media feed at all times. So there's a lot of stuff in the works right now for wrestling games, and that's very exciting. And having this AEW game be included in that conversation, I think we're just all better for it, right? It's like wrestling itself. If you're a wrestling fan, you want there to be a lot of different types of wrestling available. You want AEW to be successful just as much as you want WWE to be successful. Ring of Honor, New Japan, AAA, everything. The more wrestling, the better. Because if all these companies are thriving and being successful, then that means we're getting more wrestling. And isn't that what you want to see? More wrestling? The same thing with more wrestling games. If the AEW game is successful, that can open up more wrestling games being introduced into the market. Because let's be honest, there's not a lot. There hasn't been a lot. It's always been WWE, and it's been hit or miss. It's great to try to get back to that time where there were different wrestling games on different platforms, and they all played different. They all felt different, and that's what I'm most excited is that AEW is making a claim to bringing that back. And yeah, I'm pumped. I hope you're pumped. Let me know in the comments if you're pumped. If you're pumped about the AEW game, what you want to see. Maybe I'll make a video about what I want to see in an AEW game, what I want to be different from wrestling games in the past. What do I want to be brought back from the Aki games? What do I want to be changed about the Aki games? Because again, it's my favorite series of games. I've put in way over 20 years in these games, but there's a few things I would change. There's a few things I would tweak and make better. My channel probably in the next few years is going to be more relevant than ever, right? So I better hop on that Virtual Wrestling 2 bandwagon that everyone's going to be on. I should have been leading the thing. I should have been leading the charge. Maybe I'll finally make that Virtual Wrestling 2 full-length tutorial series that I've been wanting to do. But I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm still kicking. I'm doing well. I got a few wrestling shirts that I wanted to go out and about and go see wrestling, but obviously because of the pandemic that didn't happen. I had the tickets to the AEW Rochester show where Brody Lee would have made his appearance, and that would have been awesome. And I had one ticket and I was all ready to go, and they canceled it a week before because COVID, and here we are, and now it's rescheduled to June 2021. So it's probably going to be a while before I am able to go out and watch a wrestling show live again, which is a bummer. But to compensate for that, I have been still watching wrestling on YouTube, online streaming services, WWE Network, New Japan. I've also been collecting wrestling figures, which is something I've never done. I mean, as a kid, I had a few, but I didn't really get into it. I used to collect the Marvel, and comic book action figures more. I used to do I had a wrestling ring. I had that old blue wrestling ring, right? And I used to fight with my Cyclops and Apocalypse, as opposed to going out and buying actual Stone Cold or Rock wrestling figures, because I never liked those wrestling figures. They didn't have a lot of points of articulation. But look at this. I got this Jushin Thunder Liger. Can you see this? You see this Jushin Thunder Liger over here? Whoa! Just knocked down. Just knocked down No Mercy in Virtual Pro. Look at Liger here. Look at this guy. This is expensive. He was expensive, but totally worth it. This is what wrestling figures look like nowadays. It's crazy. So I was actually kind of thinking of talking about my newly discovered hobby of collecting wrestling figures. It's a very small collection. I'm working on it. I don't want to just run out and collect everything. I want to collect my favorites, like this Eddie Guerrero. Legends Eddie Guerrero that I got from Target. I went to 3 different Targets, only found this one. I haven't opened it yet. Maybe I should do a video where I open it? Huh? Let me know if you want to see that. Obviously, you probably want to see me continue working on the N64 wrestling games and maybe even Fire Pro and other series, which I will. But I think I would like to do videos like this too, where I'm just talking to you and we're pretty chill and we're hanging out with our wrestling games merch, talking about wrestling, talking about all the things we love about wrestling, and I would like to do some of that. So leave in the comments any suggestions, tips of what you want to see me do going forward to expand the, again, diversity, right? Expand the breadth of my wrestling themed content, not just with video games, but with just wrestling in general. I don't know if I can go back to streaming on Twitch too. My schedule doesn't leave any real room for me to stream on Twitch right now, and probably for the foreseeable future. So this might be the best outlet to talk about current news in wrestling. And I don't want to be a news channel. I don't want to just talk about news, but I want to talk about stuff that really matters to me as a fan, like an AEW game that says they're going to be like Virtual Wrestling 2 and No Mercy. That means a whole lot to me. And also maybe my journey on collecting these wrestling figures and why I'm collecting wrestling figures as an adult, you know, in his 30s. You know, why? Why are you spending $20 a figure? Come on. Liger was more than $20. And, you know, trying to find deals. I think I should work that into the videos because these aren't cheap and I definitely don't have a lot of money to spend on them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're excited about the AEW game. Or if you have reservations, concerns, questions, confused, still wondering why you should be excited, let me know in the comments. We'll talk about it. And hopefully by making more videos on Virtual Wrestling 2 in the Aki series, I can get you excited because I do think it's a promising thing. I hope for the best, and I'll see you in 2022. All right, everyone, take care, stay healthy, stay safe, and until next time, I'm Be Better Gamer. You know what to do. Keep watching all the wrestling.